and welcome to today's episode of the Female Stoic Podcast. Today we are discussing Stoic humility in the novella A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. As we know, Thanksgiving is fast approaching, and I thought it appropriate to have a reflective episode this time. So, A Christmas Carol, the original publication date 1843, it was an instant success, with the first edition selling out by Christmas Eve. So it was massive, and like many of Dickens' other works, it was written as a work of social commentary. And Dickens himself had this lifelong devotion to helping the undeserved. And this was partly due to his own experiences with poverty, debtor's prison, and being forced to drop out of school as a boy and work in a factory. His biographer, Michael Slater, described the author thought of A Christmas Carol as a way to help, quote, open the hearts of the prosperous and powerful towards the poor and powerless. And I argue this is a Stoic approach to the same sense of loss that his main protagonist, Scrooge, had. Only Dickens deals with it in another way. Dickens triumphs because he, as an author, is in alignment with his purpose. He's been proactive in his response to something equally as devastating as Scrooge's loss and sense of poverty as a child. So again, as we approach Thanksgiving, we're beginning to think about gratitude and how it attracts this sense of humility. And what better a literary masterpiece to talk about than A Christmas Carol? What an achievement, what a commitment. So first of all, we're going to talk about what is humility, and as I say every week, we do have a journal exercise that you can come back and re-listen to the Female Stoic podcast, revisit and use this episode as a prompt for your journaling. What is humility? Well, in metaphysical and spiritual belief systems, humility is considered a high-frequency emotion. It's vibrating at a higher level than negative or ego-driven ones such as pride, anger, fear, guilt, or shame. And as Stoics, we understand those emotional responses to external forces are chaotic, fleeting, and have little agency in the protection of our inner peace. So pride, anger, fear, guilt, or shame are emotional responses. But they are vibrating at a certain level, at a lower level than humility, because it is an acknowledgement, a Stoic acceptance of what will be, and a commitment to the pursuit of inner peace, regardless. So let's have a look at Christmas Carol. We have Scrooge working at ground level, as it were, so the same level as pride, anger, fear, guilt, or shame. And when we first see him, he exists in this dark and dank place, a metaphorical pit. And as we travel back in time with the ghost of Christmas past, we come to see this is a result of his ego-driven choice. He wasn't always languishing at this level, but he has, through his commitment to being reactive, he has now sunk to this level. And that's because he's got or made life choices as a result of an emotional reaction to external forces. So, his driving force is greed in the beginning of the novel, and you might say, well, is greed an emotion? He is reactive, but is that an emotion? Is he living on an emotion? And I would argue, yes, it's more of a complex emotional reaction, and it's stemming for his desire, this character's desire for more, and a dissatisfaction with never having enough. And as we contrast this with Dickens himself, we come to understand that through his endeavour and what he achieved, Dickens did not choose this path. He wasn't writing for the pursuit of financial gain. He was writing to fulfill his sense of purpose. And this is Scrooge's story. His character is vibrating at a much lower level than this, a much lower level than gratitude, which is, of course, what Dickens is exhibiting. He is grateful for his opportunity to make these, to have this platform to make these social comments. And Scrooge's character is based on reactivity, and obviously reactivity can only be negative because it relies on the energy of external forces to feed it, which is not control and it's not protection. Scrooge is not protecting anything. He is allowing the walls of his inner citadel to crumble and let the external forces in. And in this story, why it's so wonderful is this is juxtaposed with Belle, and Belle was his early love interest, and the ghost of Christmas past takes him back to revisit that time when they were together. And of course Belle represents humility. Her walls are stacked high, and I'm pleased to say I inhabited her character on stage a few years ago, and I loved every minute of it. So in this novella, she plays a pivotal role. She is deeply influencing, albeit now from the past, deeply influencing Ebenezer Scrooge's transformative journey. She's symbolising the life that Scrooge might have embraced had he been less reactive, a life filled with warmth, family, meaningful human connection, the life of a less reactive man. So her character, the character of Belle in A Christmas Carol, is challenging us to consider what is truly valuable and sets in motion this internal conflict which eventually leads to Scrooge's redemption. Eventually he sees the light. He understands, all this time I believed financial gain was the answer. I believed greed was the answer. I believed reactivity was the answer. And in fact, I need to get back to the core basics, which is what Stoicism is teaching us. Belle is embodying this gentle voice of morality. And when she leaves, which she does, this underscores the cost of Scrooge's choices, providing a clear contrast between a life rich in reaction and one marked by stoic virtue. Now, you might say Scrooge is experiencing great loss, and to feel deep pain and make choices as a result of that is part of the human experience. True, of course. But as Stoics, we understand we're not lacking compassion for those who experience this pain. We are not negating the value of that pain or the extreme ways we are called to react to that pain. If we are hit, of course we will smart. If we are hit again, we will smart again. And over time, we then come to understand that being hit is part of life. And the only thing we can control is how deeply, over how long a period of time, we allow ourselves to react to that. Scrooge suffered the hit. He was unloved, he was poor, he was lonely as a young boy. But Dickens is teaching us his emotional response is not equal to the hit. It is in fact over-exaggerated and unnecessarily prolonged, and that's the point here. Nobody is negating the impact of pain, but we are seeking to compartmentalize it and understand its significance, but not overvalue it, not place excessive value upon that so that it then dictates our life choices. And I can say, hand on my heart, as a Stoic, I have the capacity to feel sorrow just as intensely as anyone else. I am highly sensitive. And I know it will be disabling at times. I'm not negating the poignancy of that. But I seek to empower myself to be able to rationally perceive the true implication of what's happening and not overstate it. Not allow it more significance than it should have. And that's why, as Stoics, we choose proactivity over reactivity, because otherwise we know that there will be no end to the pain. There will be no resolve. There will be no peace. There will be no ease. And this is what Dickens is showing so beautifully here. The story is about a life choice, a prolonged choice by the protagonist to live in misery, to live in reactivity, and it awards him no peace. He lives on his own, he eats alone, he goes home to sleep in the dark, he is frightened, scared, fearful, tense, reactive. And as I've said so many times on this podcast, this is war, and we must arm ourselves. The hits will come, the pain will come regularly. So how do we manage that? This is a management of emotion. We're not negating the emotion, we are managing it. And this is what Belle represents so well. This pretty feminine facade, a covering for an ironclad citadel. As they say, do not judge a book by its cover. A soft facade, but inside she is so much stronger than Scrooge. In A Christmas Carol, Dickens is portraying her as patience personified. She is practicing Stoic humility, a true understanding of who Scrooge is, an acknowledgement that she loves him, but a commitment to her own inner virtue above that. And this humility steers her away from greed. She does not align with his reactive choice. Her Stoic refusal to be blindsided into following the same path as the one she loves means that ultimately she can live with herself. She can be at peace. And again, this is what Stoicism represents for me. The maintenance of inner peace. And that's one of the loudest messages for me in this novella. Humility is the understanding of our place in the world, our purpose. And this quality of having a modest view of our value or importance, and understanding we are part of a bigger picture, a larger force. If we're vibrating at the right level, if we are vibrating at the Stoic level, If we are aligning with our true purpose, we understand this and we refuse to be drawn into reactivity, which leads us away from this. And it's important to remember we have more than one purpose. We are multifaceted as humans, both men and women. So we have an inner purpose, an inner drive to create or maintain or to build. We also have a purpose to acknowledge and be part of a bigger picture, our family, the relationships closest to us, what we can give humbly without expecting to receive in return. And this is what this humility, this is how it relates to Stoic philosophy. Again, if you want to revisit my tracks, they're on the free tracks on Insight Timer, Christmas with Dickens, A Christmas Carol. Do so over the Christmas season. Take a listen and open your eyes to the Stoic messages within. And consider the life that Scrooge could have had if he wasn't corrupted by greed and the ego. Of course, it's a Victorian novella. It's all going to come good in the end. But the message here is the wasted years due to reactivity. So to go back to Stoic philosophy and just to tap into our journal task this week, I'm calling upon you today to take a pragmatic approach to your own development, and in your journal, be honest with who you are and what you consider to be your purpose. And then ask yourself, is what I consider to be my purpose ego-driven, or is it a humble purpose, an acknowledgement I am part of something bigger? What do you consider your purpose to be? Do you have more than one purpose? What importance do you place on each purpose? And ideally, we should recognize as Stoics that the ultimate purpose is to understand actually we have a very, very small part to play in the grand scheme of things, but extremely significant part if we match up, if we align with our inner virtue and understand there are others that rely on us. We are part of a family, a story, a community. And it is part of our purpose to give without expecting to receive. And to accept that we may not receive, but to give anyway, without question. If we're refusing to be humble, we're in danger of believing we already know the answers. We're negating the value of our ability to focus on purpose over personal advancement. So you may say one of my purposes is to grow, to make things happen, to teach people, to lead. And it's a fine balance, because humility has more value as a Stoic than our personal advancement. Epictetus says, "It is impossible to learn what one thinks they already know. An acceptance of our weaknesses a humble acceptance of our vulnerabilities, and that we do not have the answers, and that we should be working at it, and that it is not all about us. A sense of being part of a much larger picture. This Stoic philosophy is teaching us resilience. It's viewing mistakes as opportunities for growth, and it's avoiding the reactivity. So it's encouraging us to focus on the quality of what we can bring to the table. And if one of our purposes is to achieve, which quite rightly so it would be, our satisfaction shouldn't depend upon external validation, external applause, external praise. When we look at Belle, she's juxtaposed with Scrooge, but she's not preaching to Scrooge, and she's not saying, if you only did X, Y, Z, we wouldn't be in this situation. There's a humility there. There's an acceptance, that's just the way it's got to be. I can't make the man someone he's not. And that's the point here. Receive without pride, says Marcus Aurelius. Let go without attachment. And Belle in A Christmas Carol is demonstrating this humility through her contentedness with a simple life. She is happy to choose that life, and if in the future she commits to another purpose, she still places the value of her human connectedness with others at the top of her hierarchical list of purposes. She says, is quoted as saying, their initial engagement was formed when they were both poor and content to be so. So she's highlighting, you've changed, I haven't. I'm quite happy to be who I am because I value happiness, I value inner peace over material possessions, which is a sign of her humble nature. She's offering emotional and spiritual wealth, not money, and in terms of this story, not a dowry, which ultimately would make her less valuable in the eyes of the increasingly materialistic Scrooge. And this causes her to feel sad and to feel angry, but then to understand, no, there's nothing I can do about this, so I'm just going to have to let it go. She doesn't engage in a heated argument. She doesn't demand anything. She gently releases him. And she is calm and dignified with that, despite her sadness. She has protected her inner peace. And through Belle, Dickens is using this virtue of humility to critique the excessive materialism of Victorian society. He's suggesting that true richness lies in humility, in human connection, love, contentment, and not in the pursuit of wealth. And to come full circle, he's aligned with his purpose, and he's using his voice to champion the Stoic cause, the Stoic sense of humility. So today we are going to end with a quote from one of my favourite authors of all time, who is C.S. Lewis. And this is a quote about humility. He says, Do not imagine if you meet a really humble man, he will be what most people call humble nowadays. He will not be a sort of greasy, smarmy person who is always telling you that of course he's nobody. Probably all you will think about him is that he seemed a cheerful, intelligent chap who took a real interest in what you said to him. If you do dislike him, it will be because you feel a little envious of anyone who seems to enjoy life so easily. He will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all. If anyone would like to acquire humility, I think, tell him the first step. The first step is to realize that one is proud. And a biggish step too. At least nothing whatever can be done before it. If you think you are not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed. And that is what the Christmas Carol is teaching us. The truest, most powerful, significant purpose is to love, be compassionate and kind to those closest to us, and practice a humble acceptance of our limitations in order to honour who we are and what we can give to the world in acceptance of that.